Hey there, folks. Welcome to another comic book talk. That's right. We're talking comic books, Comic Book Wednesday. Hopefully, you're having a good time. There's other reviews that are coming after this video and stuff like that. But with me again, a great guest, WAKIZASHI'S Teahouse. It's Gray. Brother, thank you so much for hanging out. Let's chatting again. It's great to do this with you, man.
Always a pleasure, Pops. We had a great talk last time. Really enjoyed
Yes.
that. So yeah,
Absolutely.
talking about
Every time's always a blast.
yeah, new comics, old comics, good comics. Because like we said last time, there are some good ones out there, aren't there?
Yeah, and sometimes they don't, you can't get too ahead of yourself with thinking it's going to last forever, but you can have a good run. Obviously this is the guy who's turned me on to the Spawn verse, which has basically been revolutionary, the stuff that I'm
Oh,
enjoying.
good. Are you still reading some of the Spawn
Oh yeah, I
titles?
just finished doing a quick little thought review on Gunslinger. I get caught up on that
Great.
to like episode to issue 10 or 11 or so. I'm in King Spawn again, which will now put me closer to where Scorched comes into play. So they kind of have their team book. So
Oh,
I will.
good.
So
Yeah.
I'm still way behind real time, but I'm enjoying the journey amidst doing all these other things. And I also did one thought I would share because I don't know if anybody hadn't seen it. I did a review of Exo Manowar. So this is a new Exo Manowar, and I thought it was just beautifully done. I was just so pleasantly surprised with everything that we loved about sort of like the 90s feel, like the toxic male look, a lot of that
Mm,
sort of like Valhalla, Thor and the Vikings sort of feel with everything.
that's
So
Liam
that,
Sharp, isn't it, on the art?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I like
yeah,
his style.
yeah, really good stuff. So that was a good review. That's up there. Really enjoyed that book. It's a big surprise. Just
Okay, I
saw the
haven't read it,
cover.
Pops. I heard like mixed things. I heard some people saying it was good, but some people saying it's not as good as the old XO stuff. But I
Oh,
don't
I
know the
didn't say it was
character.
as good
Do
as the
you?
old XO. I don't want to get too carried away because the
Okay.
original XO Valiant and some of the Valiant stuff has been very, very good. It's
Yeah.
just it's again it's like kind of what we said earlier too. It's like they can't seem to thread that together. For I will say this: what they should do with most of the Valiant stuff and maybe modern comic books is go to the Hellboy model where you tell a story with a set beginning and end. You treat it like a graphic novel, or whether it be six issues, 8 issues, whatever. This is what you do, and then you move on, you tell another story. It's not the numbered sequentials forever. It makes it easier for them to change artists and stuff. It would make it easier for them to do these things that they want or have to do, because we lose so much consistency from some of these story arcs. So that's definitely one of those things out there. But that was
It's a
one of
good
the ones that
point.
I had read that I actually, again, when I say it's good, I don't mean it's like classic. I'm not putting it up there with the top tier stuff or anything like that. But it was very good. The exception to that rule is the one you recommended called King of Spies, which I think is classic. I think that's just a great story.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because I actually got quite a surprising comment about that. About someone saying, it was kind of meh for me," and I was like, "King of Spies, like man, do you not
Huh.
enjoy action packed comic books?"
Yeah, I would ask why. Like, what is it? What
Why?
is
Yeah.
it? Yeah, and I don't mean offense with that. I just mean I literally don't know what I want to know what you were looking for. This doesn't have, or why it's not your book. Which, it's like one of those things where if we could peel that onion just slightly to know what they're into, we probably understand. Oh well, this probably wasn't a book for you. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
um, you know, we are big Sandman fans, right? We enjoyed
Yeah.
that. But some people that were into sort of like that fantastical type work, they really may not have been into capes and tight superhero type comic books as well. So there was some people that were like that. Well, okay,
Sure.
then you do have people that can may not like some of our recommendations or whatever because you have differently an affinity towards one or the other, of course, right? So
Sandman brought a lot of new readers into comics, especially this is what I've heard. A lot of women, a lot of female readers
yes.
came in with Sandman. It made a massive audience. So as you say, I think most of those people maybe they weren't into Batman or Spider Man. But how about you, pops? I enjoyed both worlds. I was still buying Batman when I was buying Sandman.
Agreed. I didn't find Sandman until way later in my game, and
Okay,
again, I think I couldn't even afford to get older Sandman early on, but their stories were very contained, so I could read Dollhouse, so I could have a very definitive place to jump
yeah,
in. I could read. You know, then I could and I could kind of know, and I really do that now too, where I try to reread things. I'll try to look at something and make sure that I've got like the whole story arc or something like that. And then that made it easier for me to go backwards and try to get some of these older Sandman issues and things like that. Because I think it was a very long time before I got to the actual first appearance of Death, because we didn't have back then. You didn't always have graphic novels and things like
No.
that were being produced. So you would have to try to go find a floppy. And some of these books were already very expensive by the time I got into the game. And that was one where the actual first few issues I hadn't read until kind of later. I'd already read, I probably had 20 or 30 Sandman comics. Probably, I think by then we already had some of the spin-offs with the Dreaming and maybe Children's Crusade and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I get now I can get, I have issues 7 and 8. I finally can read,
No,
can
that's really
finally read
interesting
some
you
of this.
say that, because that the first one I got, the first issue was the Death, the Sound of Her Wings, and it had a recap. The comic book issue has a recap of what happened
Mm-hmm.
before, so I had to go and trace, those first,
Mm-hmm.
is it 126 or 127, whatever it was.
Yeah,
And as you said, the first few were like, they were already expensive, and this is only
sure.
a year after they come out.
Mm-hmm.
So I started from the Death issue and then never looked back.
Yeah. And but I do get that, new people would come in, they would like certain styles, certain things. I do know a lot of ladies did like the relationshipy elements of that book is very indicative of what a lot of female readers enjoyed about many other, which were kind of like some of that was worked into other comic books. I think Daredevil is really kind of a lot like that, where Daredevil is very grounded. It's a lot more about interpersonal relationships and dynamics and
Yeah.
betrayal and things like that than it is about, a Superman story, which is completely got a different tone and feel to it. So well, let's get to one that, and we'll snip this out for a clip. So if people are catching this clip, go back and check the whole comic book talk, and check out the playlists that are below, so you'll know a little bit about some other stuff that we've been talking about. I have not finished issue number 2, but I didn't want to wait a lot longer to talk about this because we can kind of go through a lot of issue number 1, and we don't really have to spoil a whole lot because the whole issue is really set up for a ton of world building, a ton of setup. So, I don't know. How did you just find this because it's an image and you've had good luck dabbling with some of these, or did you get this through a recommend?
This was through a recommend in the comment section of one of my videos. I reviewed, what was it? It's one of the Mark Miller image ones. It might have been Nightclub or Nemesis,
Mm-hmm.
and someone said, if you get a chance, please check this out. It's really good.
I was reminded of sort of like The Boys, right? Sort of that
Yeah,
feel of you live in a superhero universe with like characters that are sort of like divorced from reality. You have other characters that are immersed into what feels like everyday life for us. This book, the biggest thing that Tim Seeley did that I enjoyed right off the bat was he treats the readers with a lot of respect, as though you're very, very smart. So early on, you have this sequence where he's at like a bus stop and this guy in this truck's like, no, there's no bus, man. There's not been a bus forever. Then he kind of backs up and there's back and forth. And then he drops this thing about, you crossjack or something like that. Now, when this happened, I thought to myself, is crossjack a city? Is crossjack a nickname for something? Because you don't have a context yet. You don't understand the dynamics. That is some really good storytelling because we're just going to treat the reader as smart rather than trying to spoon feed them some.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm like you, Pops. I haven't read issue 2 yet. I've not got round to it, but this is really good. And it's the way he builds up the story. You don't have to tell everything at once. You're showing it, aren't you? Which is so
Yeah, show
important.
not tell. Yeah. Uh-huh. And Tony Flex, I assume would be the artist's name, um, because he helped co-create this with Seeley. The art is that's it. It's what you get. You get like a kind of a realism, not
Yeah.
really photorealism. Like you have just this very grounded. I was reminded very much into this image. It really struck me because it felt like a rock album cover or like a music cover or something like
Yeah.
that, where
Like
he's
a U2,
walking.
Heartland.
Yeah, he's walking into town, this Farmington town where he lives, and basically the character is going home to see mom and dad, and that's dad there on the left in the middle panel, who's basically like, "Well, you're awful late for dinner." It's kind of like it took him because there's no bus. no one wants to help him out, so he had to walk from the edge of town. The sign says 10 miles. So that's how that plays out. And again, we're going to go through a lot of the book, but I don't think we're going to spoil a whole lot because a lot of this is just set up. So
Yeah,
this is his mom
absolutely.
coming into the kitchen. There's dinner. Dinner is literally just on a plate. There's comments about how they've already eaten. They get into conversation briefly about how you're going to get a job. What are you going to do? It's kind of like setting up like the loser guy who's come home to mom and dad. You don't know how long he's going to be staying with them, living in the basement kind of thing. And I purposely kind of grabbed this panel on the right because it's her saying a prayer and it says, "Bless us, O Lord, for the gifts which we are about to receive, and bless our son, help him find peace, and forgive him, Lord, for bringing disgrace upon his old family." Amen. And there his face is just like, seriously, like, yeah. I thought that was great.
It's
It
great
tells
because it
us,
starts out so serious, doesn't it? Like it's a it's a proper prayer, and then yeah, as you say, the way she just like puts those phrases in, you're thinking, oh my god, what's he done?
yes, yeah, and they're not giving us a lot of information. They're just not going to get into things. And then the story just kind of moves along in sort of a tedious manner with him talking. There's this cutaway on the right. I mean, it's on the left in the middle, which at the time I didn't quite get my head around a whole lot. Like, what are we cutting away to here?
Yeah,
Like, what are we talking about? Like, you don't have context. Again, treat the writers like they're smart. Um, and they're just talking in a manner that just makes you feel like he's kind of a loser and you don't know why. And then later they have this whole sequence where he goes to like the local bar and that's kind of what's in the middle there where he's kind of interacting with people and he's going to throw darts when this suited creature. I'm reminded of like the rhino costume from Spider-Man where it's like
it
this
does look
dude,
a bit like that. Yeah,
his face is showing, but he's got all this stuff and he has sort of like, I guess, cyber techniques that make him strong. And he just bursts in and just starts talking about, Crossjack.
Pops just wanted to point out, the first panel, the first flashback where you see the female character with the gorgeous
Hmm.
ginger hair looking back, that gave me a Watchman vibe. If you know what I mean, does that make sense? It's like you see
Absolutely.
someone, it's like, something's happened with her. You know that already, don't you? So, yeah, I just
Yeah,
wanted
you
to
already
point it
know
out.
she's kind of given him like I have feelings for you
Yeah,
feelings, right?
and
Which is
his little
definitely
smile. Yeah.
hmm yeah. You have a lot of like Watchmen inspirations, but I won't say it has that type of tone.
No,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, so like inspirations would not be a surprise. So he has this fight. Let's go back. So he has the fight with this guy, and his name is very strange. His name is like Hey Dog, and it's like
Yeah, it made me
Hadog.
laugh though. Did it make you laugh?
Oh,
Hey, dog.
I was just kind of like, huh? But again, everything is also very rudimentary, like a nickname like Crossjack. And we'll get to some of the other stuff that's introduced.
Yeah.
Um, so he just basically just starts fighting with this guy. Like the guy actually is trying to communicate with him, but he never even gives the guy a chance to talk. He just starts throwing down. They kind of throw him out of the bar. And during the fight, he just kind of grabs like a trash can lid and whatever and starts pummeling this guy. Well, this group just shows up, and this is where you do kind of get Watchmen slash old Image comics. Like I thought about,
Yeah.
like Youngblood and things like Wetworks, things like that. They just come
I love this
strolling on
scene. I
out.
love these kind of scenes where you're shown suddenly multiple characters. You've no idea who they are, but it's intriguing, isn't it?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, and then you get this interaction, and then basically this becomes like the boys part for me, where they're like giving him like, you're under a contract with the company, you're not allowed to use anything as a shield. He's like, well, it was a garbage can lid. He's like, or shield like object. You can't use the name Crossjack. It's copyrighted, And then it's like this person's like, um, kind of talking smack because they're igniting their hands. Like so there's some sort of power that they have. You don't at this point you don't understand the extent of a whole lot of
No.
what's going on. You just know this stuff's happening, and they're laying the groundwork for the fact that there's a company. They've copyrighted elements of whatever the superheroes can or can't do. They have no problem using legal recourse to do it, as though that would matter to superhero individuals, but evidently it does.
Was
And I
it
think for you,
sorry, Potts, what's part of what he's saying here, like the things you can't do? If you've seen some of the things written down, it's like solving crimes, battling supervillains. That's so
mhm,
funny. It's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be a hero, aren't I?
mhm. And I like, or engaging in large scale events against cosmic or otherwise infinitely powerful beings. It's it is funny because it's such a word salad. It's not something that someone actually would say or would say exactly. Like the cadence wouldn't work. Like to say this out loud would be it would be hard to sound natural and
Yeah,
not sound
absolutely.
like the like an infomercial commercial or something like that. But again, I don't know about you, Gray, but what really was getting me, and I had to go along for the ride for a minute because I'm like, I can't get myself caught up into the who's who and the what's what yet. I just got to have faith that this is going to pay off and we're going to understand some of it.
Remember having faith when you read a new comic book, a brand new issue. You used to go in and think, okay, you're giving yourself to the writer, like, okay, get me involved, entice me, pull me in.
Yeah, trust. You trust that they're going to pay this off. You're going to
Yeah.
trust that they're going to let you understand some of this stuff. I skipped over a lot because I didn't want to get too far into some of the other elements to kind of wrap into it.
Sure.
But then, because he has this relationship with the hometown girl, there's some other interactions there around this super team briefly, and then you have this cutaway to Hey Dog, and Hey Dog has been murdered, and there's like a special delivery message on him, and that's kind of how the main story sort of comes to a close, and where we're going to pick up later on for issue number 2.
Wow, that's a shocking ending, isn't it? And a real
Yeah,
cliffhanger for
because
sure.
it didn't even have the feel of everything else. Like this was so
No.
intense. Everything else
Yeah.
seemed very grounded into real life. And sure, there was a fight at a bar, but it was more like actual fighting. Like it was actually like one punch here and a little blood to the face and whatever. This seemed like a gruesome serial killer. And obviously the chains are reminiscent of like Spawn and things like that, which is very supernatural feeling, those kinds of things. And then when you get to the next panel and you're like images of Local Man, it looks like something right out of the 90s of like promotional material, and you're like, what on earth, what
Yeah.
is so I have said it, I have to admit Image does this too. Images, the reason I don't like the ones that Image do is because they put a lot of substance in theirs, but they use backstories. I can't stand the second backstory. I really wish they would just stop doing this, but
Really.
all almost I was having an issue with the Marvel book. I did a review about Doctor Strange, which come out in a couple of days, and it was like there's like this backstory that ties to the main story so intricately. It's like, well, then why didn't you just write this in there? I don't understand why. Now this was done differently. What they did was they basically now start giving you these. This is the backstory. So
Yeah.
here's the backstory of who everybody is, what some of their powers are, and you have these very intense introductions, colors, who all these different characters are, and things like that. Um, and this is where you do kind of get into, Watchmen meets Boys meets Youngblood meets, all Wildcats, all this stuff that we like. And you start to get dynamics. Like here's your hot redhead on the right, and then this is this guy with this big cross who's far right religious guy, pro gun guy, stereotype. That's guy here.
Punisher style. Yeah.
Yeah, but he has a relationship with her, which is you can see that then briefly there, and then you have this again on that bottom right. You have that exact same image that we had earlier, where she's looking over her shoulder back at him. So we have love triangle tensions, is what they're alluding
Yeah.
to, but without saying things, without saying anything cheeky or silly. Do you have any other? Because the one other question I wanted to ask you, wasn't it fun how the main story felt, I mean, this was a lot of colors, but for the most part, most of the book has a very grounded look of color and stuff like that, like this,
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
right? And then you get a little bit of ramp up of some colors and conflict, and then the heroes arrive. But then when you get this backstory, you're thrown into not just a backstory, you're also thrown into like the look of like 90s comics. You're thrown into some stuff that felt like 80s and 90s, and the
Yeah.
colors are very bright and vibrant, and everything was different. It was very interesting. I would
This
say that
screams 90s, doesn't it? This whole image just screams 90s, like X Force, X Men, as you say.
yeah, it's definitely those type of characters of mysterious powers and teams and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's what the next couple pages do. They just kind of go through setting all this up and the who's who, and they're fighting one next to another. They talk about Crossjack's role in the team a little bit, things like that. So you're getting basically just a flashback story to what has led up to where we are now. We don't know exactly where it is in the timeline. We just
No.
know it has. And then, of course, this is the cover for issue 2.
Pops the big image on the left of the
Mm-hmm.
Crossjack, close up. Doesn't that just like it's come straight from an X-Men page? I'm not
It
sure the
looks
character, but
exactly like Rob Liefeld's work,
yeah, doesn't it? Yeah.
exactly like his work on Youngblood, Prophet. He did a book called Prophet,
Ah, heard
exactly
of
like
it.
that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just so everybody knows, this is not a major spoiler. And I know you haven't read it, Gray. Issue 2 does begin with it's the next day. The police show up, they arrest him because the dude's been killed. He's like, "You think I did this?" And then, of course, he's given up his alibi because he had that meal with the farm girl, right? The lady that he had a relationship when he was
Yeah.
young. Well, it turns out she's the wife of the police interrogator. I don't know if he's the police chief or not. I don't remember. And then, of course, he's seen these graphic photos of what happened to Hey Dog. And between that and whatever happened last night, he basically pukes right next to this mural of him. This says, "Welcome to Farmington, the hometown of the world famous superhero Crossjack."
Crossjack.
So I thought that was a good place for us to stop. And that was before I knew you hadn't finished number 2. I just thought this was a good place to stop and not
Oh, it's
spoil
perfect.
anything that happens next because it's all been set up. It's all been lead up. You could probably we're probably going to be able to finish issue number 2 and then go back and read issue number 1 again and pick up some of the pieces of things we didn't quite understand or appreciate more. So I really have to appreciate the recommend. I thought this was actually a nice, fun read, a nice change of pace from some of the stuff that's been done over the last couple of years in particular. But this is Image. Image is old school comic book making where they will make the artsy stuff in one pile and with political messaging. Eric Larson has never held back. If you read Eric Larson is very transparent about his politics. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, Savage Dragon is who he is, right? But that it's in a bucket over here, and then this is over here. We're gonna do this. He's gonna do Spawn. It's this is the way it's supposed to be done, and it's a shame that the big 2 just got away from that, and that's what I think has happened. Yeah.
Pops, what do you think of Savage Dragon? It's a title, I'm aware of it, but I've never really read it. I've read the odd issue here and there, but never really enjoyed
I
it.
just can't get into it, and I think it's
No.
just that it can't go. For me, it just never went full Hellboy and interesting and immersive. And he wears like the police outfit, but he's like this dragon. And then, of course, a lot of books that came along later. Again, he is very transparent with his politics, and it's very in your face with it. He's not. Okay, so just spoiler alert, he is very anti-Republican. So he has books completely trashing and mocking President Bush and then President Trump. He's in your face. There's like a pornographic Savage Dragon cover, and that it had to be made with like a black bag.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's some
No
stuff that's
way.
just like, and for me, I just kind of feel like ugh about it. I mean, it's just not my thing. And I think it's also because I just really couldn't get into that one when it first came out. It just wasn't my thing. I just couldn't get into it. I don't even know how to answer their question really too
No,
much.
no, that's all
It just
right.
sometimes it's just not my thing, And I have to be honest, I didn't last long in the original Spawn run. You get into 20 something issues. I was probably out for a while. Then around 50 or so, I kind of got back in. I had gone backwards, maybe not every single issue. So I ended up having from like the late 30s well into like 60. And then I would kind of fizzle out again. And I have this massive regret. And I have this, I teased it last night. I'm going to tease it again with you. If you haven't looked at the Spawn books in like the 200s, between 200 and 300, their print runs tanked. So they end up making only some of these books probably have maybe 20,000 or less copies. But they
Okay.
did these amazing, beautiful covers that are homages to some of the most classic imagery. Because he loves to do his own tributes. So he'll do like Spawn 3, tributes to, the Spider-Man 300 or
Yeah.
Spider-Man. No, he went full on. So there's like the Hulk one with how they have the Hulk, the Wolverines, the claws out, and then it's the Hulk reflection in the claws, that famous Incredible Hulk 340 one. Yeah, so there's all these beautiful covers, and because the print runs were so low, they're extremely hard to find and they're rather expensive. So if you can catch them digitally, guys, or you know if you go to a shop and they happen to have all these older Spawn books, it may be worth a look because some of them are beautiful. I don't know what the stories are like. I've never read any of them, but I
No.
these covers were super cool. So anyway, so there's a recommend from us from this guy who's got me, and I could definitely second the recommend. Hopefully, you've enjoyed that. We love to hear from you guys because it came from one of you guys out there recommending something for us, which is what this is the best part about doing this is that we can have that kind of interaction like old school comic book store stuff where you'd be hanging out. You know, might meet somebody in the store. Oh yeah, what are you reading? What are you doing? Whatever. Next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole with some other thing that you had never even heard of before. So that's what this is great about. Thanks again for that, Greg, because it's been awesome.
No, that's exactly it. You're right. That's one of the best things about comments when you get, great recommendations in your
Mm-hmm.
YouTube video comments or even on Twitter. So, yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. So I'm gonna, so if people are catching this clip, make sure you check out this whole live stream, check out his channel. So that'll be there in the description as well. So Gray sent me a link, which I have accidentally closed because I was jumping around. In the meantime, I will say that Gray, speak a little bit to your Venom Lethal Protector sequel that they have released because I have not gotten to it yet, but you were like mentioning that.
Yeah, that was a surprise because, and Pops, you'll have to correct me because I never get this writer's pronunciation right. David Michelini?
I think it's Michelini, but
Michelini, thank
I
you.
could be wrong, but I would not pronounce it was like um it took me forever to know that it's pronounced Bill Sinkovich.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm like Sinkowitz? Like
Sinkovic or something like that. I didn't know what I was
Sinkovich?
saying.
Yeah, Sinkovich. I think it's David Michelini. Again, to David personally, we apologize.
Yeah.
To those of you who know, I'm sure you guys will let us know in the comment. But no, it was pretty cool to see his name drop when you talked about this. I saw you. I think it was either in one of our Twitter threads or something like that. You says, David Michelini is back, Lethal Protector 2. I'm like, oh my.
Well, I was reading when I started reading Spider-Man back in the late '80s. He was the writer at the time, so I knew him from that. I didn't even know he was a co-creator of Venom. He's called the co-creator of Venom.
No,
So
he is the co-creator. He is the writer when McFarlane was the artist. So
right,
the famous, Todd McFarlane gets on Spider-Man at issue 298. And
'98. I used to have
yeah,
that.
yeah, and then at issue 300, of course, is the famous, the full-on first appearance of Venom and the big swinging costume and all of that. Yeah, David Michelini is the writer on that run that McFarlane is known for because McFarlane's art and stuff like that. Michelini's story is a lot of fun, and again, this is classic storytelling of that time of why we were fans because it was like a villain of the week.
Yeah.
It was perfect. So every book has these beautiful covers, beautiful stories. It's fun and lots of action. It'd be like, okay, we're gonna do Mysterio, and then we're gonna do Lizard, and then we're gonna jump over here to Green Goblin, and we're gonna do. So it's like you end up with this run that keeps going. They have crossover stuff with other characters, but they don't get like too obsessed with it, right? They don't get down that rabbit hole. And it gets, when you're into it about in the 320s, you start to see some issues where it starts to kind of because by then it starts to become popular, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
then you end
it.
up with like, 6 and 8 issue story arcs, and you start to get into crossover stuff, and you're like, but it does fine. It does good. But it makes McFarlane the famous, artist. And then of course that's how he ends up getting that Spider-Man book that is the game changer.
Yeah, which they made supposedly commissioned just to keep him at Marvel Comics. That's the rumor. Give him his own series.
Oh yeah. So well, they kind of had to do something. Have you ever seen? There's a. I know. I don't think it's overseas. I came to learn because I did recommend it to Ryan Roger Athay. The app called Tubi, Tubi. It's an
Oh
app.
yes, yeah. We
It
can't get
has.
it in Japan. I don't think it's a
Yeah,
bit of a
that's what I've
pain.
heard. There's free content with commercials, right? It's like traditional TV. They have the image documentary on there. So the image documentary is them talking to the original 6 and 7 guys about how
Oh,
all this
cool.
happened. It is a lot of
I
fun. I
think I
don't even
saw
know
that
that.
years ago when it first came out,
Hmm.
probably on TV. Pops.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've been rewatching that. I think I got pulled away and started doing other stuff. I haven't finished the very end of it, but I got through the meat of the formation of Image. And my favorite part is Rob Liefeld says, "Yeah, we killed Superman. We broke Batman's back." And it was like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." And it was
Wow.
they got so big and they were sucking so much money out of the room that's why DC and Marvel started coming up with these stunts to try to get publicity and do these different things. So back then, remember, death was death. Like, Bucky died, never came back. Like, we didn't really think Superman was dead, but we kind of feared, like, oh crap, they might actually just like shelf Clark Kent for a while. Like, it may just be these other Superman for a while, things like that.
Yeah.
And then it was like you knew Batman would come back, but you weren't really, and it went on for a while. Like, you have to remember this whole story with Azrael and then John Paul. It went on for a while, so we were really kind of without Bruce as Batman for a pretty long while. So it was an interesting time, and the documentary does a good job of kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit about kind of what that actually turned into, because I don't think people who didn't live through it understand the frenzy of it all.
I'd like to
Anyway,
see that
so
again. Yeah, I'd like to watch it
all right,
again.
so I derailed our conversation about David Michelini. However, yeah, new comic, Venom Lethal Protector 2.
Yeah, volume two. I think it's either 5 or 6 part miniseries. It's just again, pops. It just pulls you back to those times. It's like wow, late 80s, early 90s. Just the good storytelling, simple but fun. Great action scenes. Women are drawn like women. Men look like men, like heroes, masculine, feminine. It's so good. I just had a great time with it, and I was surprised by the length. I didn't do a page count, but it's a long book because that's probably why they put it at $4.99. So you got to pay a bit more for it. But yeah, I'm not saying it's amazing. I'm just saying it was a really fun read.
Did are you familiar? Because this is the artist is Fareed Kamari,
First time to hear the
Kar-
name. I checked it
Karami.
on League of Comic Geeks and it shows his photo. I don't know him. Don't know the face.
So this is the tease, which I didn't watch your review because I don't want the spoilers. I know you don't really do a ton of spoilers, but even then, I didn't want anything. I love the cold recommend.
Yes, of
Uh,
course.
Brock versus Doom. Nuff said. First off, Nuff said references need to come back. They need to figure out people who actually get that. You
Yes.
know, Venom co-creator David Michelini returns to the brand new story set in the sinister symbiote's past, which is perfect. Which is perfect. Set the story in the past, but hopefully they're going to add to the legacy, not derail anything. And then it goes on to discuss about the conflict with going to Latveria, where Eddie Brock is challenged like never before. So I was like, yeah, I want to see that. I wanted to see that there were some cool variant covers. So yeah, there's some really nice things that are done out there. This is
I went in cold as well, Pops. I didn't know. I hadn't even read the solicit, so I didn't know about the Doom. And so that was a great surprise. And there's also, I won't say who it is, but there's somebody else in here as well. And I was very happy to see. It's like, oh, okay.
very cool. Yeah, I really can't wait to get into that a little bit and check some of that out. I'm going to actually. It kind of made me. I had people bring up the original Lethal Protector series. The imagery of that is kind of famous, and I just hadn't done it. I just hadn't. It's only like 6 issues, but it is sort of like I missed the boat because I wasn't doing really content consistently enough back then when the movie dropped. Because obviously it ties directly into the first movie with the
Okay.
with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
evil corporation doing experiments, and they get a hold of some of, you know, and of course, the entire premise of Lethal Protector is Spider-Man and Venom have a truce. Just don't commit crimes, Venom. Just don't go around killing innocent people and stuff, man. Don't do this. And Eddie goes to San Francisco, right? So when he goes out to San Francisco, it's like then things start to come after him, right? And that's what ends up on the
Yeah.
news is he's in these conflicts where things are coming after him. And when Spider-Man's there, he ends up having to fight alongside with Venom and Spider-Man fight alongside one another because now there's these other, I want to call them offspring seeds. I think it's the term in the comic
Yeah.
book, like
Yeah.
offspring symbiotes, and that's where you get the one. I think Scream is probably the most famous one that's lasted. Riot, some of those other symbiotes that carry on, and of course, I think the second movie tries to tie a little bit of that in, but it's just everything was a muddled mess with those movies. They're
I
just
didn't even finish the second one. I started it and sorry, I couldn't finish it. I enjoyed the first one. It was just like kind of popcorny, pulpy fun.
hmm
And
hmm
I thought, is it Tom Hardy? I thought he was good
hmm
in the role. But yeah, what happened with the second one, Pops?
They wouldn't go at rated R. They just wouldn't do it. They just so that scene when Carnage breaks out and you're doing all this stuff, and I'm like, there would be blood everywhere.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm not saying because you don't want to do rated R because you want to have a wider audience, but then you're going to have to shoot this scene completely different. You're just going to have to
Yes.
shoot the scene different. You're showing us things, but then you're excluding blood from the scene. So now we can't be in the moment. We're not in it. We just don't do it. So, um, let's get over to kind of our big surprise of the day. And again, folks, if you are going to catch this as a clip, I'm telling you, go check out Gray Stuff because this was a great find. I had not seen. I really haven't heard much about this.
No, it's
Um,
hard to even find these figures, these the articles, Pops. They don't really broadcast it, and you probably know why now after reading it, don't you?
sure. It's called a website called icv2.com, which I'm not. They have games listed first, so I assume maybe they're more into gaming news than they are anything else. It says, quote, sales rankings, units and dollars based on comic store points of service data, dated April the 3rd. It's unit and dollar sales ranked on sales, tracked at point of sale by Comic Hub System at stores selling American comics around the world. That is very interesting because that may actually point to people who actually bought the book.
Yes, that's what's important. Again, it can't be 100% accurate, but it's the fact that it's going for not just that, not just in America, around the world. You know, you're getting the international numbers mixed in with this, so you get a real
Right.
sense of what's popular and what isn't.
So I would assume that this would exclude things that are not part of that point of sale service. So I don't know how um, some other internet sales and things like that would work,
Yeah. Does
but
digital factor in? Probably not, does it? Not
I would,
digital, I don't
yeah, I
think.
don't think digital would factor. We don't, all we can say we don't know, but at least it's a snapshot. And if you're using a certain data point and you're applying it universally and your sample size is big enough, then at least you have some decent data. This is a 5 week. Um, it's weird because it says collected based on a 5 week month from February 26th to April 1st. So what they did, they just treated a month as like 5 weeks.
They put 5 weeks into March, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
And it's like the top 50 comics. And what we were discussing privately before we did our stream was how much Marvel is on the list, how DC has kind of slid down the list, and we had to go pretty far down before we got to Spawn.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, a little bit sad about that because I think maybe this time last year it was booming. Spawn, it was huge with Gunslinger and King. You know, not long being released. I think Gunslinger was a top seller, not number one in the whole chart, but it was a top selling Spawn book over Spawn.
yeah, well, I have to be honest. I can see that because the buzz that surrounds Gunslinger is more than the
Yeah,
traditional Spawn. But I think that's also the newness of Gunslinger. You're talking about a character that's only been around for a year and a half or so, year and a half. So he's got that figure that Roman of the Empire opened up and shared with everybody, things like that. So, yeah.
it's a
And
great design.
Berserker is really the big surprise for me because it's number 5 on the list.
I know that's because it's the final issue, 12 of 12. Have you
Yeah.
seen the price as well? Six ninety
Well, I
nine.
was getting ready to say that because of the price, it puts it near the top at the top by dollars.
Ah, by dollars. Okay, yeah.
Because the price point is so much higher. It's almost double like a Marvel book. So, but again, with Berserker, and I have some right over there. The premium stock and quality is really, really, really nice. I mean, I'm not trying to justify $7 for a book that you probably can get aftermarket, for a reasonable price, not $7. However,
No,
it does show that their marketing strategy of trying to spend more money, people will come buy it if they like it, they want it. You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't think they were all that price either. Were they, Pops, the earlier
I don't think
ones?
so. No, no,
No, I think it's
I
because
didn't
it's the
pay that
finale.
because I bought 3 copies of issue number 1, and I have a couple
Oh,
of the
did
other
you?
copies. Yeah, I have
Wow.
three different covers. There's different covers. They didn't do the way they did their marketing wasn't as complicated to get some of the variant covers as other books are. So the other book that was really pretty cool to see high on the list, I don't think I see it on the top, which is what was strange. That's the Ninja Turtle book. So the
Oh no,
sequel,
it's in the top 15, I think. IDW.
Oh, it's number 8. Okay, there it is.
There
Number
we go,
8.
number 8. Look at
Yeah,
that.
so the Last Ronin sequel has started. IDW has it. It's a 4.99, so it's like $1 more. It wasn't a ton more, but look at the difference. It put itself from 8 up to 5. So that dollar book made a difference. So that was interesting. That was interesting.
We the one that shocked me, well, yeah, no, about shocked is the right word, Potts, because we've talked about the current Amazing Spider-Man run and how so
Mm.
many fans have had enough. They're just switched off. They're out. But yeah, it's taken over number one spot from Batman.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I would have to, plead guilty, because even though Chip Zdarsky and got off to such a great start and a great story around, issue 125, by the time he got to the end of that story, he couldn't stick the landing, and I kind of
No,
like I'm in that category, just bailed out. I'm like, I can't do this, and then it gets so strange. The artist changed, so R.I.P. Jorge Jimenez art in my Batman book. I
I
had to get
know. Miss him. He
it
went to
was
do Nemesis Reloaded for Mark Miller
mm,
instead,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
amazing.
So I can see why there would be a fall off. I also can see that the difference between sales of Spider-Man and Batman is probably pretty small. Like I would think that would be something they would be pretty close in numbers because they are by
Yeah.
far the two most popular things. I really don't know anything about this third book. Do you know anything about Hollow's Eve? I don't even know what that is.
Yes, it's a brand new book about. It's a character that was introduced in Spider-Man, and
Hmm.
she has this weird power where if she puts on a Halloween mask, she becomes the kind of that character, like Frankenstein or a ghost. She gets the powers of the character. It's quite interesting, but I can't believe it was number three, Pops. That really surprised me.
I'll have to do a little read on some of that stuff and give you guys my thoughts. If it's something that's that big, that's just very interesting.
I think
I
she
mean,
might
it
have
may be
popped
some.
up in Dark Web, that awful event they dropped in the middle of the Spider-Man run. I think she might have been created there. I could be wrong there, but that's the first I've heard of her. So from there to
Okay.
her own book, it's only a few issues, isn't it? Only a few months.
Yeah, yeah, it's a definitely new stuff to see her come into the scene. So X Men comes in at 4. Hulk at 6 was a shock. I didn't think there was a big Hulk fandom still kind of
No.
hanging around. I didn't know if there's something special about the book. I couldn't think of anything. I know, like yourself, many people have praised the Batman and Joker, the Deadly Duel. They're up to issue number 5 now, so that's been that is something that people are really, really loving. I don't know if you're totally up to date on issue number 5 or not.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm hanging until it's done at this point because I didn't get in early enough. So I'm just
Oh,
gonna
Pops.
because we only have 2 more, so I might as well just wait and do
I
the whole
know.
thing.
Six
Yes,
came out on Tuesday this week. Six has just
right.
come out. I haven't read it yet, but wow, I've heard it's good.
Well, everything about his work, it's just yeah, I'm just so down with all that. Yeah. So when we were talking about it, though, you were like, man, look at how much DC has kind of fallen away. Like, obviously, we talk about it a lot, like Batman book, Superman number 2. We both liked Superman number 1. We thought that was
Yeah.
a good entry point. I haven't read Superman number 2, so I don't really know exactly how well it keeps me going, but I will say I really enjoy number 1. Batman book, Batman book. This is that Adventures of John Kent. I did a review on that. I thought it was awful. Not as awful as the other book that had previously had centered around John Kent, but it was still pretty
No,
awful.
still pretty poor because it's Tom Taylor, isn't it? What do you
Yeah,
expect?
I didn't read Action 1052. I'm kind of out. Like I just don't know why I should bother. Yeah.
Actually, Pops, the main story, what's annoying with that is what you talked about earlier. The main story is actually very good, but there are three stories in Action Comics. The third one is awful. It's a Power Girl, which has just finished, thank God. It's written terribly. The second one is quite a nice John Kent when they de-aged him again back to how he was before Bendis, aged him up and ruined him. That's been quite
Right.
good, but the main story is like a Superman family book. It's really good.
I will say I was very surprised to see Star Wars is here
Me too. I had no idea it
and
was a big seller.
Mandalorian is there. Thought that was just a very big surprise. I'm like, oh, so I did a review on Predator number 1, which
Oh,
made the
what do you
bottom.
think of that?
Hey, listen, if you like Predator and it's just like senseless Predator stuff, around this like silly little story element. It has some good
Yeah.
art. It has some good art. Actually, someone I know that's into Predator, I sent a link to the artist's website because they already had some of the original art up for sale at a pretty reasonable price considering some of the pages. So, yeah, I look. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I'm not going to be out there like, oh my gosh, guys, Predator is. It's like, no, it's not that good. It's not that
Pops,
good.
can you just look at or highlight 46? Oh my God, look at the wrong one, not 46. Sorry.
Sorry, I was
I
on
was
the. I'm on the dollars, so let
I
me
got
go
the
back up top.
dollars. If you go
Yeah.
to 46 here, it's Unstoppable Doom Patrol issue
Yes.
1. That came out right near the end of March. That's what surprises me. So it got quite high sales. It's only had a week to
Hmm.
to count. So it's pretty good. It's nowhere near as good as the old Morrison run or the earlier runs, but yeah, I enjoyed it. So I was quite happy to see that. Like, wow, 46 for only a week worth of sales.
Wow. It's awesome. It's great. It's a great snapshot to kind of get a feel. We hear all of these different things. I don't have any desire to sort of use a story or data like this to start beating people over the head or anything
Oh
like
no,
that. I just find it as interesting.
me too.
Maybe, I'm not going to tell you. I am guilty, right? Because I just said because Hollow Eves is that high on the list, maybe I'm missing out on something. So I guess I am guilty in saying that it does make me kind of want to check out or not check out something because it kind of does. Like I'm like, oh, what is everybody reading this? That's because that is kind of how the comic book feel would have been back in the day. I go to a store and suddenly Hollow's Eves are all gone. Everyone's talking about whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should check that out. So, um, yeah, we'll see. Time
It
management
was a big
issues.
surprise, as you say, number 3 for that Hallows Eve, and
Yeah,
probably because of
very,
the
very high.
Spider-Man connection, isn't it?
Yeah, and maybe she's a cool villain. Maybe it is
Yeah,
something interesting. I don't know. And if it is, maybe that's when people want to get in. It could be speculator stuff too, but reality is maybe it is actually interesting. I don't know. So that's our comic talk, guys. We had to get in and out quickly with Gray. We have scheduling issues this morning. We were able to touch on some stuff. Hopefully, you guys can enjoy Local Man. I know issue 1 really got me in. I haven't finished issue 2. He hasn't read issue number 2, but we did enjoy something a little bit different and more grounded with the sort of like uh, it's hanging out there as all this superhero stuff. It's like it's there, but it's not like it hasn't really kicked in yet. Of course, we talked about Venom, Lethal Protector, and some other stuff as well, and
worth a
then kind
look.
of where the industry is. So, great, thank you so much for doing that. What's some of the other stuff you got going on, my friend?
I did a review of Nightclub, issue 4 dropped. That's the Mark Miller 199
Mm-hmm.
vampire book. Very good. Just fun, really good. And I've just finished my review, Pops. I'm going to upload it for tomorrow. Amazing Spider-Man, the new issue. All,
Mm,
all I'll say is it's not terrible.
okay,
That's
okay.
it. No spoilers.
I couldn't keep going. I kind of bailed out because it was like, oh, we're gonna have a crossover story
God.
now. We don't tell anyone what's going on. We have a page where we make some comments about things, but there's no footnotes, so I don't know what
No.
issues to read. And then it makes me angry because then it'll be like 3 or 4 pages later, they will footnote something, and you're like, "Can't you footnote the things so I know?"
No, it's been
So
crazy. It's
frustrating.
broken. It's a broken run.
Yeah, it's a mess. So, but that's good. But yes, like all of his contacts are there. Check that out. He does a lot more stuff in a more timely fashion than I consistently do. I tend to be way behind. Like Tuesday comes out, Wednesday comes out, he's on it because he's across the pond. So he kind of has like his finger on the pulse of what we're going to be talking about, stuff, newer stuff. So there's a ton of it too. So what about your other stuff, my friend? You've been doing some fun reaction watches and different other types of videos as well.
Yeah, the other main one I do is we have like a weekly movie review show,
Mm-hmm.
Pops, where we just talk about random movies. Next, or this week Friday, it's going to be Midnight Cowboy. I love that movie,
Okay.
classic.
Yeah.
Is it John Schlesinger or Schlesinger?
Well,
Yeah,
if you're
long time
checking
no see.
this, you're checking this out, go over his channel because it probably is already out by now because it's going to come out in a week or so. So it's not coming out. Yeah. So you're probably already done by the time we're recording this when it drops. So anyway. Well, thanks for watching, folks. We appreciate you so much. It's awesome to have Gray with us again. Thank you, my brother. We'll be back on his channel next time to do this in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. So thanks again. Be blessed. Talk hard.